I'd like to call to order the Tuesday, January 2nd, 2024 Board of Public Works and Utilities meeting. We'll begin with roll call. Mayor Kim Smith,
I'm attending virtually. Thank you.
Alder Diane Wolf,
Here.
Jared Holter,
Here.
Sabrina Steger,
Here.
and I am Stephen Knott, and I'm of course present. Moving on to number 2, consideration and action on minutes from the previous meeting.
Motion to approve the previous meeting's minutes.
Second.
Motion to approve by Alder Wolf, seconded by Jared Holter. Any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion passes. Next item on the agenda is public input. Anyone wishing to provide public input will be limited to 3 minutes. Please provide your name and your address. Is there anyone who would like to provide public input? Second call for public input. Anyone online?
No.
Third and final call for public input. Public input is closed. Moving on to item number 4, presentation of the 2023 water system evaluation. Jared.
Thank you. I want to introduce Andy Mullendorf from Strand Associates. He's been working on the city water system on and off for over 25 years with the city. The city did go out for RFP a year ago, actually in January of 23, and started the process of an update to our water system evaluation. The last one was completed in 2012. We try and do it every 10 years to have a roadmap and a game plan for what the future of our water system, what needs we have, what growth we're going to see, all those different things. So Strand did a great job on this. Wanted them to come down and give a final report on it. Have some slides today, so I'm going to let Andy kind of go from there.
Can you hear me okay? Yeah. Those online? You're okay? Okay, that's fine. I just want to make sure. I might move it up. I'm a little taller than some people, Jared. Sorry. We've shot on my pad. Sorry. Why don't you go ahead? Head and advance to the next slide, please. One more. Thank you. So just a quick summary of what I'm going to cover in this discussion. First, just to review the introduction and purpose of the evaluation, which Jared kind of already touched on a little bit there. Cover a summary of the existing facilities, basically a general summary of the source and finished water quality, a discussion of projected water demands and the evaluation of the existing capacity, results from the distribution system evaluation, what was done, a discussion of improvements that came out of the from the study, and then again, I duplicated the improvements twice when I did the slide. So, move to the next slide, please. So basically the water study is, it's basically, looking at your existing system, doing an inventory of it, looking at the water quality, again, reviewing the historic water use, looking at the historic water use and projecting where that's going in the future, using that information to determine existing supply and capacity of storage and supply of wells. And then looking at a water distribution model. And it feels like I'm repeating myself, but that's what was done here. And then develop a plan for the future capital improvements for the system. The other thing that's happening is the DNR Administrative Rule 854 regarding water system planning. It's in its final stages of rule review right now as far as being updated. And it's basically going to require that any water utility that serves more than 10,000 people ultimately do a water system plan on a regular basis. It doesn't need to be submitted. It just has to be on file in your offices. This planning study actually started before that occurred, but in general covers probably like 95% of what's required by that plan. And other than a few minor things that can easily be added as an appendix to it, you'll basically meet those requirements. Next slide, please. Thank you. Just a quick summary of what you have for your water system. It's a very valuable asset. I'm hoping many of you kind of have an idea what's out there, but I'm just going to review it real quickly. You have 111 miles of water main, ranging from size to 2 inch to 16 inch diameter. You have 4 wells, with a total combined capacity of 12.5 million gallons per day. Later, we'll talk about firm capacity. Basically, firm capacity just means what happens when your biggest well's out of service. We size for that because when wells go down, they go down for extended periods of time. And you want to make sure you have at least that capacity, and that's pretty much the guideline most people follow for meeting supply. So firm capacity just means your biggest well's out and you have almost 9 million gallons per day of available service. Their system is broken up into 5 pressure zones. The main zone encompasses the majority of the city. And then you have 4 individual high pressure zones, which, well, they say high pressure, that doesn't mean that the pressure is higher there. That just means it's higher in elevation. And it can't be served from the existing zone. Then you have 4 booster stations that serve those 4 additional zones with a total capacity of 7,500 gallons a minute between all of them, not just for one zone. And then as far as storage goes, you have 6 ground storage tanks, 4 that are directly served from the main zone, 3 that serve 3 of the high pressure zones, and a total of 3.4 million gallons of storage. So in general, from review of the facilities, the well houses and booster stations are generally in excellent condition. Water utility staff should be commended. As engineers, we get to go into a lot of facilities and they are well maintained. They're very clean. It's obviously maintained. And usually if people are maintaining paint, they're maintaining everything else. And we didn't really see anything that really caused us any concern when we went through those facilities. So the other thing is that the wells are rehabilitated on a regular schedule. And basically, if you look at this chart is basically showing capacity metrics. And you see that the specific capacity, which is a measure of how much water you produce for every foot of drought on the well. And you'd like that number to stay the same. And if you look, all your numbers are at or above the original capacity of the well. So you're doing a good job of maintaining it. It's money well spent that occurs on a regular basis. The other thing to look at is the static water level, and static water levels more measure what your local aquifer is providing. If you see that start dropping, it means you're overtaxing the aquifer or you had some really dry years. But in general, as long as you're seeing a steady numbers like you see here, it means you got a good source of water and you're not overstressing it. So that was talking about supply. This is talking about storage. Your reservoirs basically are inspected, are in good condition. They're by code, they're required to be inspected every 5 years. And the next ones that are up for in 2026 and then in 2028, just summarizing when they need to be done. Looking at water quality, this chart is presenting just the general water quality characteristics of the water. They're not all of these are regulatory items, but they generally tell you what your water's like. The City of Onalaska water is very hard. It's got a lot of dissolved solids in it. Slightly elevated chlorides. I wouldn't say they're a problem yet, but this is pretty typical for shallow wells in Wisconsin. This is about what you expect. I mean, the only way to address hardness is to soften, and generally that's only done at a few places. Most people do that internally to their house for softening. There are future regulatory and water qualities to keep an eye on. One of the things of note, I mean, you did have some volatile organic compounds detected in the water, but these were at very low levels. Most of them were actually below the level that they could quantify them well. They were detected, but below the level they could give you a firm number on. So that's a good sign. They're basically 2 order magnitudes below what the MCLs are, so don't anticipate them being an issue. But it's something that would be monitored over time just with normal regulatory sampling to make sure that they don't start creeping up. I think everyone's heard of PFAS as far as contamination goes. Right now, there's there's a state level for PFAS, but the EPA is in the process of creating the rules for what the levels are going to be, and they're talking about 4 parts per trillion nanograms per liter. And the other thing they look at is the hazard index, which basically takes a bunch of the series of different PFAS chemicals, divides them by numbers, and as long as you stay below 1, you're okay. You do have presence of PFAS in 3 of the wells They're about a quarter to a tenth the level of the proposed rule as far as MCLs go. So there's potential there. You'll probably means that when you get to the point of sampling, you won't just, you won't do one or the first set and be done. You'll probably be asked to do additional sampling as the rules get fully implemented. But these again the rule is not necessarily finalized yet, but for all intents and purposes, this is probably what it's going to be. But you're still in good condition. It's just something that you need to be kept an eye on over time. So water system demands are developed basically from past historical water use and water and population growth. We're just showing two charts. The one on the left is the population data. You see census data, DOA projections, DOA estimates of current population. In generally past DOA estimates that were projecting out in the future were optimistically high, depending how you think of it that way. But what you can see from their current estimates for population are well below that. So we worked with Jared basically and came up with what looked to be more realistic numbers for growth so that we use those numbers to project future populations. So basically we're looking for a population of about 22,500 out in 2040, and that's what we based our calculations and projections upon. So how we do that, we basically look at the sales data you provide to the Public Service Commission. So what we do is we then look at how much we anticipate sales to increase. So historical data shows that the average person uses 99 gallons per day in Onalaska. You take that total sales and then you divide that by the difference between what's pumped from the ground or percentage that's what's pumped from the ground and what's delivered to the consumer, which is about 0.89, which means about 89% of the water that's pumped from the ground actually gets metered as sales. Now, there's reasons for that number not being 100%. Partially there's maintenance of the system, there are leaks in the system, and there's inherent inaccuracies in all metering. So 89% is really a pretty good number. As long as you're above 85%, in general, everyone's pretty happy with that. So, and then the other number we look at is then looking at peak max days, basically. So it's the day you pump the most water in a year, and we look at the ratios for average to max, and your highest peak of that was 2.75 in the last 10 years, which is pretty common for your municipality that is largely residential. You tend to have higher peaks because you don't have that baseline demand of water use that you get when you have a lot of industry. So ultimately, when you run through all that rigmarole, we're looking at average days out in 2043 being almost 2.5 million gallons per day, and maximum days being on the order of 6.675 million gallons per day as projected pumpage. And then this is the same charts we looked at earlier, but you're seeing where the maximum day projections go on the right chart there relative to what you see in the historical information. So using the projections we came up with, we then compare that to the firm capacity just to verify that, one, you have enough capacity in your well supply to meet it, and that there's enough storage capacity. So these charts are basically just showing what the maximum days were, how much additional firm well capacity, and again, firm capacity means that your largest well is out of service. And then we do a calculation based upon availability for fire flow and use for domestic peaking to calculate reserve storage capacity. And you're seeing that even with our projected demands out in 2043, we're looking at almost 2 million gallons of reserve storage capacity, in addition to the 2.2 million gallons per day of pumping capacity. So basically you have about 75% of your average well as reserve capacity right now. And so you're in pretty good shape, very good shape actually for future demands. And I'm not gonna go too deep into what we did with the water model. But basically, we reconstructed, calibrated, and operated to evaluate the system. The model tells us how well we can move water throughout the system, from the wells to the storage to the consumer. And it's a way to look at that, where the pressures are, what the available fire flow looks like. So we run average days, maximum days, peak hours, fire flows, just to see where there might be weaknesses in the system that need to be addressed. And there's more detailed mapping of the results of this in the actual report that was delivered, but it helped us define what future projects might look like. So I'm going to go into a series of slides here that covers the recommendations and costs for future improvements and maintenance. So what we're seeing from a historical perspective is about every 5 years intervals on the wells for the well rehabilitation. This is the actual borehole itself, it's not the pump. And on average, you're spending approximately $40,000 per well when you do this. You've seen payback in the past is that you're maintaining the capacity, you're not losing it. The routine well pump inspections, basically that's where the well pump's pulled out, refreshed, bowls are worked on, motors, etc. And on average, we're seeing that about $70,000 a year per well, or not per year, I'm sorry, not per pulling. And that's happening about every 10 years. And then the other item that may be out there on the well supply is the potential need for separating the phosphate feed from the remainder of the storage and the other chemicals. This may be required by the DNR. It's not necessarily going to be required immediately. It's something that may come in the future. And then because the stations are set up all a little differently, each one has a slightly different cost associated with it on what it would take to implement. As far as storage requirements, which is the next one, the report's calling for a Crestwood pressure zone reservoir. That's going to be triggered based upon growth and development in that area. Basically be adding, that zone currently only is served by a booster station. And as that grows, once you go over a certain threshold, you're required to provide storage. And this provides a ground level storage similar to what your existing ones are in your other high pressure zones. I believe the number we were using was 150 to 200,000 gallons to place that reservoir. And then we're covering just the miscellaneous costs, which include the reservoir inspections that occur on the 5-year interval. And then 2 other things that would be at the Wells Street Reservoir, which this is something that showed more in the modeling, is that it's very difficult to fill the Wild Rose Reservoir, which is out beyond it. So that wells want to fill the nearest reservoirs. The idea of adding altitude valves so you can close off the reservoir so it stops filling it when it gets full and you can push it out to the next reservoir basically. And there's a different number on the 2 because they're different size lines that go in. So when we looked at water main improvements, we looked at existing projects that are kind of already on the books, like the Main Street project, which we're showing here. This is just being coordinated along with some utility work, along with the proposed expected cost. We can keep moving. And I'm not going to go too deep into any of these water main type projects just because they're many are the same and many are driven more by potential growth, potential changes in how the system may operate, not so much on a strong need that was revealed from the study. The Sand Lake Road improvement with the north-south interconnector, just basically to help move water in the north-south direction. You have a lot of well supply in your north side. This helps move it down. And this is, I believe, associated with, am I going to say that right? That was another proposed road project that we would be coordinating that with. And so some of the things we looked at in modeling was one, a potential emergency interconnect with the city of Holmen to the north. That's that far upper left corner there. Basically was looking to see if it was feasible and if we could deliver water to that location. It didn't really look to see if, what would be required to move water into Holmen. That would be assumed to be theirs, but this basically was looking at the ability to move water back and forth between the 2 communities in an emergency only at this point. Then there was the Cedar Creek Lane. Again, this one was driven by the the need for expansion was what it would be related to, and how to get water out to that system or that area. And then Overhill Drive was an area that was showed an area that was needing looping. There was some dead end, some lower fire flows in that area, and this was basically added or suggested to do that. It's a relatively minor improvement to make that occur. The next one was then extending water along, excuse me, along Sand Lake Road, Highway 53 loop. This is would be again driven more by development along that route. It also helps with north-south connectivity, although it doesn't take away all the hydraulic concerns you have going north to south. But it's more driven by that. It gets a little, it is pricey because we are connecting and part of the connections have to be done directionally drilled, given where these things are going to go, in order to help move some of that water from north to south. The Second Avenue project that's pointed out here is more for fire flow. There's a single 6-inch line that kind of goes out that peninsula, so it's a little bit limited on what it can do for fire flow. It still hit the minimums, but it's a little, the code minimum says 500. Typically, fire departments like see somewhere between 1,000 and 1,500. This is just an improvement that could go along with that. Again, it would be, this isn't like, hey, do this tomorrow. This is we redoing the street, we should do this. We got another project going that way, we should do it then, so. And then the kind of the final listing of projects here. We're looking at places where looping needed to be done. First one is, if there was an area that's currently in the township, if it would happen to come into the system, that's why you'd bring that Green Cooley-OS loop back through. It benefits everyone in that it closes the loop and helps move water, but it would primarily only occur if that area along there wanted to come in. The French Road Emerald Drive loop is a really short connection that we thought looked like it should be in there. It's literally about a couple hundred feet. It just happens to be in an area that's and it closes up a loop. The Crestwood extension basically is extending water to a proposed is basically again closing a loop on a log dead end. I'm sorry, I was looking at it wrong. And then the East Plaza Road extension is an area for someone looking to develop kind of northeast of Highway 16 and required as a directional bore under 16 to get through to bring water up into that area. I guess the summary and the takeaway is the system is really in pretty good condition. It's very good condition. They're well maintained. They're good overall condition. The record keeping is really good. I mean, when we asked for stuff, it came really fast. So I mean, not every community is that good. So it's a positive for you all. You've made good investment in the system. I mean, part of the reason why you have reserve well capacity is you installed that iron and manganese treatment at well 9. It made it so you could run that well more frequently and not worry about water quality, and that really has helped you. Yes, it was an investment, but ultimately it wasn't. I think it's paying off for you in the long run. You've dealt with lead and copper issues. These were things that were identified in the last report. The phosphate addition has helped with it. The well maintenance has helped with it because that seemed to be a contributing factor. And the well rehabilitation, maintaining that capacity is important. The dollars seem a lot when you look at it, but when you consider that if you had to re-drill the well itself, you're going to spend $250,000 to $300,000 if you had to replace the well at a minimum, not including the well house and the other facilities that go with it. So the maintenance is an important thing, and you're doing a good job of staying on top of that. And I guess big picture, you have reserve well capacity, you have reserve storage capacity that meet the projected needs that we're looking for, as well as there's capacity there if there's some unanticipated growth or expansion of the system required. If someone approaches you, if we can deliver water, there is reserve capacity there. So that's, I think, the other main takeaway from what we saw. At that point, I would throw it open to people to grill me with questions if they would like.
Mayor, do you have any questions?
I do not have any questions. Thank you for asking.
Anyone else? All right, thank you very much.
Okay,
Very
thank you.
detailed. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Andy.
And thank you to Public Works for maintaining our wells well. Wells well, I guess. Hmm. All right. All right, so moving on to item number 5, which is the purchase of geographic information system software. I believe it looks like that's for 85.2K. Jared,
Yes, in your packet tonight, I have included a proposal for a 3-year agreement from Esri, which is our provider of GIS software, for a 3-year agreement to have the small system software municipal agreement. We have looked at this and looked at our à la carte costs and have found that they would be slightly more than the agreement if we utilize that, and also that the agreement would offer, not but offer, but and offer more options in software licensing and flexibility and usage. We actually get more right now. Every person in the Public Works Department has a field operator license that we pay $350 a year for each iPad. So all 22 iPads in the Public Works Department cost $350 a year just in licensing. So with that, we're licensing 22 of them. With the small user agreement, we can get up to 50 licenses at no additional, it's the same cost whether we license 1 or 50. So we don't necessarily need them right now, but it does offer us flexibility in the future. So we see that this is a better way to go. We are increasing our licensing costs from the 2023 because we are upgrading some of the licensing that we have currently. Myself and Kevin, Katie Aspenson, our planning manager, our Esri software that we're using will get upgraded to a better, more robust version. So we would be able to do more with it. So we just see there's pluses all around. It is a large software cost, but I would point out that until there was about a 7-year period there until about 2018, 2019, where we were using a separate water system software, and we were paying a little over $10,000 a year just for that. And we were able to combine the Esri products that we're already using to do our GIS mapping into controlling all of our data too. So as you know, Andy just pointed out with our water study, we have so many things that we're digitally adding now, keeping track of maintenance and projecting things out, that it's just a powerful tool. And as any of you that visited Public Works or seen our Public Works staff, they're carrying your iPad with them pretty much all the time now. So we are recommending, we did budget, it was approved in the budget for the 3-year license agreement for $28,400 per year, be a total 3-year cost of $85,200.
I make a motion to approve the purchase of the geographic information system software for $85,200 for 3 years.
Second.
Any discussion? Motion by myself, seconded by Dan. Oh, I'm sorry, Dan, go ahead.
Thank you. Just a couple quick questions.
Yep.
Jared, I think, do you have a rough guesstimate of approximate maybe savings? I mean, I realize that, you know,
It was going to be, seeing here, and I left it upstairs. It was less than $1,000
oh, okay.
for the à la carte. But I will say the savings, as I stated, the savings would be relatively small, but it gives us much more flexibility in the number of licenses.
Right.
And we could even expand in how we're using things now that we aren't now,
Right.
that we might be able to monopolize on and be able to leverage our situation even better.
Thank you. And second and last question, I think at this time is on bottom of page 31, it says number of Esri user conference registrations provided annually is 2. Are we sending someone to an annual conference for this?
So our former GIS analyst went to the national conference. Esri is based out of San Diego, California, so the national conference is in San Diego every year.
Yep.
She went once in her 5 years here, so that's the only person we've ever sent to the conference.
Okay.
So
I was just curious whether we had it in the budget or not.
It is something that I'm sure as Tim progresses here, we'll eventually send him to.
Okay.
It's one of those things where you just can't get that kind of learning environment in 3 days with all the summit. I mean, you just can't.
Yeah.
you know, it's being with your peers and it's a great thing, but
Yeah.
we just,
Okay.
Over
I
here.
just happened to notice that and I just would just,
Yep.
you know, something always to consider. So thank you.
Any other discussion? Again, motion by myself, seconded by Alder Wolf. All those in favor, please say aye.
I,
Opposed? Motion passes. Item number 6, pay estimates. We have 7 items.
Motion to approve the 7 pay estimates that is in our packet dated January 2nd, 2024.
I'll
Okay.
second that. Any discussion? Again, motion by Alder Wolf, seconded by myself. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. That concludes the Public Works. Moving on to utilities. Item number 7 shows that we have no report, which brings us up to item number 8. I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn at 7:21 PM.
I'll second. Motion to adjourn by Alder Wolf, seconded by myself. Any discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? We are adjourned. I have 7:21.